Okay, so we're going to be looking at Ephesians chapter 2, and it's only going to be the first 3 verses, but I was struggling to put this together, and I couldn't get past the first verse for quite a while, so if I go on too long, maybe someone just signal me and tell me, okay, that's enough, or something like that, and we'll carry on for the next time. Have the bell ring. Okay, so Ephesians chapter 2, verses 1 to 3. And you were dead in your offenses and sins, in which you previously walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, of the spirit that is now working in the sons of disobedience. Among them we too all previously lived in the lusts of our flesh, indulging in the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, just as the rest. Okay, so I had here just a quick recap of the previous sessions, how we had looked at sort of the background of Ephesus and who Paul was, and the things that we picked out in the first chapter. We saw that we've been richly blessed with every spiritual blessing. They're not earthly blessings, they're spiritual and in the heavenlies with Christ. We've been predestined to obtain an inheritance in Him. And we looked at how the predestination isn't what most people preach it to be. And also saw how Paul was just overjoyed with the report that he had received about the Ephesians and their faith, and how they continued serving the Lord. So in chapter 2, the portion, verses 1 through 10, it's in a sense, it's our BC. It's our state outside of Christ, before we came to Christ and before we were saved. It illustrates how we were dead, but God has made us alive in Christ. And just as He brought Christ back from physical death, by that same power, He has made us alive to Him, if we remember in chapter 1, verses 19 to 21. So what God the Father was doing physically with Jesus, He's doing spiritually with us. So how does God do this? What does He give to make us alive? If you think of it, He reverses the natural order of things that go from life to death. And He takes us from death and takes us to life. But what life is that? Is it a happy lifestyle and all of that? Or is it some thing that's given? It's Christ Himself. In John 6:35, Jesus says, I am the bread of life. In John 14, verse 6, He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So He doesn't just give us life, He is that life. And we have it abundantly, according to John 10, verse 10, when Jesus said, I have come that they may have life and have it abundantly. So if you think about death this way, it's not some tangible thing. It's just the absence of life, the separation from life. So if you take something that's alive, be it a person or an animal, and you take away that life, what you've brought is death. And so if we take Christ being life, being separated from Him, that means we are dead. We have death. And what we have to acknowledge, what separates us from Christ is our sins. Because He is holy and He cannot stand the presence of sin. So Romans 3:23 tells us that all have sinned. So no one is exempt. We all are sinners. Not some, not most, all. And that is the reason why people end up in hell. It's not God punishing people and throwing them in hell. No, you chose to be separated from God. There's no other options for eternity. There's with God in heaven or separated from Him in the other place. So if we look now at let me just turn this around so I can see where I am. At the portion that says being dead in your trespasses and sins. If you think about that scene that he is illustrating and painting here, it's almost like it's from a horror movie. It's like a zombies walking around, a dead walking. You were dead, it says. We've already seen we all were dead, not just some. But note that he says you were dead. It's past tense. And what Paul was talking and saying to them is by the fruits of their lives and the reports that he'd received, it was evident that they're no longer dead in their sins, that they've been made alive in Christ. And surely that explains why Paul was just so overjoyed with the report, and he had that prayer of thanksgiving. So that begs the question, being dead, what is that? Is it physical death? Well, obviously not, because he's writing to them and they're reading, but it's the spiritual side of you. And some people have the idea that when you're spiritually dead, there's just nothing there. It's dormant, it's void, if you will. But that's not the case. Your spirit is still alive, but it's just not alive to Christ. And there's the argument that talks about, that fits into the predestination teaching, that says God has to make you alive first before you can respond to him. Can a dead man hear you when you talk to him? If you go to the mortuary and you speak to a body, is it going to hear you? No. But that's the Calvinistic idea of irresistible grace. But if we turn to John chapter 11, and we have the account of Lazarus dying and Jesus going. And if we pick up from verse 43 to 44, now when he had said these things, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he who had died came out, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, loose him and let him go. Lazarus was still dead, and he heard, and he responded. And if you think about that scene, as he's coming out of the tomb, he has that moment that's quite pivotal. He's standing with death behind him and Christ before him. He could choose to ignore, stay dead, or listen and go forward to Christ. And it's a picture of us, really. When Christ calls us, do we choose to stay with death, or do we go forward with life in him? There's also the example of the prodigal son. That's Luke chapter 11. If you want to turn there, you don't have to. But the prodigal son, when he took the inheritance and he left, was he dead? Did he die? No, he didn't. He lived a life of self-seeking, debauchery, and partying. He basically took all his inheritance and squandered it. And you take that example and you look at what culture today would say. They would say, hey, now that's a good guy. He's lived life to the fullest. And that's such a lie. That's not life. That's death. But not only speaking in the spiritual sense of being separated from God by living in that sort of world all the time, it's it's death on your body as well. I mean, you pick up heart disease, kidney, liver, drug addictions, and all sorts of things come from that kind of scene. And of course, it's just set for self-destruction. But when you read that account, I think maybe we should turn to Luke chapter 11 and verse 20. Have I got the right verse here? I don't think I have the right verse. It's not the right verse, sorry. I've kind of lost my place here. Is it Luke 10? I thought it was Luke 11. Sorry, guys. Maybe it's not Luke, maybe it's John. Mm. Okay, maybe someone can pick it up and find where it is while I'm going. But basically, Luke 15. Maybe I just wrote down the verses wrong there, sorry. Yes, it's Luke chapter 15, thank you. Okay, so from verse 17, it says, "But when he came to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have bread enough to eat and to spare?" Because he's so hungry, he's feeding pigs, and he's wishing that he could eat that food. And and I perish with hunger. I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. So he comes to his senses and he says, okay, look, I'm going to go back and I'm going to admit my guilt and my sins. And when he returns, note what the father doesn't say to him, not what he does. He doesn't say, I told you not to go. Look what you got look at you, you've got what you deserve. You took my portion to you and you've squandered it. Um, have you learned your lesson? And all these sort of things. He doesn't say that. But if we look at verse 20, I should have just left my Bible open. Verse 20 says, and he arose and came to his father, but when he was still a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And it's just it's rich, it's deep. I'm not going to go too much into it, obviously, but it just got me thinking, what is my reaction when someone has slighted me and they come back for reconciliation? Am I like this father? Am I willing to go and make that reconciliation, or am I still, no? But then verses 21 to 23, and the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight, and am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, bring out the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet, and bring the fatted calf here and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. Man, that father is just so overjoyed and he is elated. His son has come back and he's calling for a great feast. But here's the whole point. Verse 24, for this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to be merry. So the son wasn't literally dead, but in a sense he was dead to the father. And how did he come back to the point of coming back home? Did the father send out servants? Did the father himself go to him? No, he came to his senses and he went to the father in repentance. So we see from that individuals, each person has to make that decision to repent, to seek forgiveness, and be willing to be a servant of the Father. And the beautiful thing is he takes you and makes you a son or daughter. If that other view held true, as Dad has said before, what would be the point of evangelism? What would be the point of gathering here on a Sunday or spreading the word, preaching the gospel? If God's chosen certain people, there's really no point in doing it. It's almost cruel if you think about it. But also fitting in what we are saying today in Romans chapter 10, verses 5 to 21. Now I'm starting to worry, have I written down that verse right? So it's Romans 10, Okay, we'll take it from verse 13. For whoever calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? And how shall they preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the gospel of peace, who bring glad tidings of good things. And Christ has sent us all to preach, not necessarily to go out to Syria or even maybe Cape Town, right here in our areas. Okay, so what does it look like to be spiritually dead? What are the symptoms? I'm not going to go through this whole list. There's a lot here because I've taken from a couple of different verses, but it's spiritual blindness or deafness, a cold heart towards God, uncleanness, lewdness, idolatry, sorcery, hatred, contentions, jealousies, outbursts of wrath, selfish ambitions, dissensions, heresies, envy, murders, drunkenness, revelries, wickedness, covetousness, and it just goes on and on and on. Lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. And that's the whole world, isn't it? But it's also what we were before we knew Christ. But now being with God and being made alive, it's not just a set done thing. You've been made alive and now everything's hunky-dory. I wish it was, but it's not so. Galatians 5, verses 16 and 17 tells us, I say then, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusts against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary to one another, so that you do not do the things that you wish. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. I always had it in my mind that simply because um, we have the sinful nature, we can't help it, but we just kind of, that's our default, we just sin. A byproduct of being fallen humans. But that verse tells us the flesh lusts against the Spirit. It's an actual active battle going on. Um, it's warfare. You can't relax and just be at ease in the middle of a battle. You have to be active. You have to be on your guard. And this is why in so many different passages we are called to die to self, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, because this flesh nature wants to drag you off. As someone, I don't know who it was, said, the flesh cares nothing for spiritual things or for God because it's not going with you when you die. It stays here, you go. So it does everything it can to try to keep you back. But the world comes along and it tries to tell you something different. It tells some really big lies I'm sure we've all heard. But one of them that really goes around, you need to learn to love yourself. I mean, we already love ourselves, and that's why we feed and clothe ourselves. And there's another one, follow your heart or believe in yourself. Really? Follow my heart? The thing that gets me into trouble all the time? And it's all sorts of different spheres, different areas that scream this message to us day in, day out. From the education system that really it's from a younger and younger age, the state keeps trying to take the kids away from the parents earlier to indoctrinate them and take them off on their own agendas. Um, the arts and entertainment industry, sports, politics, we do interact with these things, we do see them, but we've got to remember it's all Egypt. And each one of those things has a god, if you will, that people worship and serve. Deuteronomy 32:17 tells us, they sacrificed to demons who were not God, to gods whom they have not known. new gods who came lately, whom your fathers did not know. These things, I mean, people, the emotional state, yes, we all get a little bit worked up when we watch the rugby and the Boks are giving the All Blacks a bit of a hiding there. It's exciting, but there are people that I saw it the best when we were in New Zealand. And the way when their team loses, the absolute depression that sits on the whole nation. It's, yes, we get upset and we moan here, but there it's just something else. It's crazy. It's like a religion. And this is why I was saying I was stuck on verse 1. This is still verse 1 of the portion. But it says here, in your transgressions and sins. It's those transgressions and sins that kill us, that keep us dead. Romans 6:23 tells us that the wages of sin is death. And when you think about it, when you work, when you take on a job, you don't just earn the wages. You, in a sense, kind of demand them. Your agreement is that you basically sell yourself or your time, your abilities to your employer. And you settle on, you agree, that's what I'm worth. So by living in your trespasses and sins, you're not just earning it, you're kind of demanding, I must get death. Some of the translations use the word offenses and sins. And it just made me wonder and sit and think for a while, do I realize my sins are offensive to God? It's not just, oh, you messed up, oh, it's offensive to him. Okay, we can finally move on to verse 2. Verse 2 tells us in which you formerly walked. Again, he's using the past tense because they have moved on from these things. They are now living in Christ and moving forward. It's a reminder to them as well that they have grown and that they're alive to leave these things behind them. And it's so important to encourage one another. We all go through rough patches of doubt, depression, and we need each other to pick us up and help us along. And that's why it's important to gather on a Sunday or any other time that we have. And if you think of what, okay, look, I don't watch a lot of sport. I don't really watch Comrades Marathon, but from what I understand, what the whole idea of that is, you're comrades, you're all running this race together, you help each other. When people get tired and are struggling, other people that are stronger help pick them up and carry them. And when I was talking about that with Chantel, she was saying that she had seen this little clip where the guy comes running along and he puts out his hand to grab a cup of water. But in his exhaustion, he knocks it and he can't stop. He carries on running. The person behind him manages to get a cup, drinks half, catches up and shares the other half. And that's what we need to be doing. And it says we formerly walked. It's not just a relaxed state that we just lived in that state. No, we were walking. We were progressing, moving forward, just in the wrong direction. And that direction was leading us to death, ultimate death, not just being dead to God, but ultimate separation. The next part of that verse says, according to the course of this world. And this introduces us to the first part of a threefold enemy that we face. It's the world, or if you want to put it in sort of hierarchy, it's Satan, the world, and the flesh. But it's almost like we were lemmings, the proverbial lemmings, busy mitching along, just following the one in front of you off the cliff to death. But, oh man, when I was growing up, I remember there was this poster of all these fish swimming one direction, and then the one, the typical Christian fish that they draw, the little basic one swimming the other way. And it was referencing Romans 12:2 that says, do not be conformed to the image of the world, but be transformed. And the whole idea is go against the flow, not just be a rebel and anarchist and just fight against anything that has a direction, but go against the world. And it's not easy. It's jolly difficult because our sin nature wants to go with. It doesn't want to be left out. It wants to go in those situations. Also, as we mentioned old Charlie Kirk with his talks and things, he was so often mocked, attacked, slated, even murdered. And it's all because the world, they don't understand this thing, this life, this salvation that we have. They're dead. Some of them even rejoiced. Um, yeah, it's not nice videos that have been shared and comments and things, but we also remember Luke chapter 12, verses 4 to 9. And I say to you, my friends, do not be afraid of those who kill the body and after that have no more that they can do. But I will show you whom you should fear. Fear him who, after he is killed, has power to cast into hell. Yes, I say to you, fear him. And are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 copper coins? And not one of them is forgotten before God. But the very hairs on your head are all numbered. Do not fear, therefore, you are of more value than many sparrows. And I say to you, whoever confesses me before men, him the Son of Man will also confess before the angels of God. But he who denies me before men will be denied before the angels of God. So this world will threaten you with all sorts of things, but do not fear them. We need to be carrying God's light into the darkness and exposing their sins. And not just for the sake of, oh, you sinner, you wretch, but to help them to see their sorry, lost state and bring them to God. Okay, so the second part of verse 2 says, according to the prince of the power of the air, of the spirit that is now working in the sons of disobedience. That prince of the power of the air, the spirit, it's Satan himself. He is the ruler of this world. He has the hearts of the world under his influence and control. And if we think about those who celebrate such evils and celebrate murder, they walk in the way of Satan. John 8 verse 44 says that the devil um, I think I better just read it. It's one of the times when Jesus is confronted by the Pharisees, and he says to them, you are of your father the devil, and the desires of your father you want to do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own resources, for he is a liar and the father of it. If you've heard Dad or myself, I think even Sal mentioned it before, there's that song by Bob Dylan, you got to serve somebody, and he says, it may be the devil or it may be the Lord, but we've only got those 2 choices. Is it God or is it Satan? People think, oh, I'm serving myself, but no, you're actually serving Satan when you do that. Because there's only 2 choices, the narrow road, serving God, broad way, serving the devil. As someone once said, there's only 2 destinations for eternity, smoking or non-smoking. What is your choice? So because people reject God and his laws and his ways, they are serving Satan. So if you submit to God and you follow him, we've already been told that you are adopted as a son. But then that means if you don't, then you're the son of Satan. Now it sounds harsh and horrible, but in a sense you are, because it's not necessarily talking about offspring, but you are following in his example and being just like him. And he doesn't just leave you in your sinful nature and just let you get on with life. He works rebellion in you and he turns you into sons of disobedience. 1 John 3 verse 4 says, whoever commits sin also commits lawlessness, for sin is lawlessness. So that rebellion is uh, um, lawlessness towards God's laws, but also it ends up being a lawless person in society. But that idea of disobedience, there are so many examples in the Bible, and we see that God considers it to be a serious, serious offense. There's just sins because you live in a sinful nature, you follow the flesh. But when you know the truth and you disobey, that's that's worse. It's the willful refusal to do what God has instructed. In 1 Samuel chapter 15, verses 20 to 23, we have before that, we have the account where King Saul is sent to take out the Amalekites. And he listens, he takes them out, but he saves some of the spoil and the cows, and he keeps the king alive. He comes back all excited and sees Samuel's like, it's great, we beat them, we listened to God, we obeyed him. And Samuel says, really? You listened to him? What's that bleating I hear? That's not full obedience. And so in that disobedience, God takes away Saul's rule over the kingdom and gives it to David instead. When Israel came out of Egypt and they get to Canaan and they send the spies in, 10 of them bring a bad report, 2 bring, yes, they're big, but we can take them, God is with us. And Israel disobeys and God says, right, because of your disobedience, you're not going in. And then through further disobedience during their mission through the deserts, they were afflicted so many times. Um, Jonah disobeyed God's instruction to go to Nineveh and warn them of their destruction, but he ended up inside that fish, eh? So disobedience doesn't work out. I've got to remind myself that I almost didn't want to turn in here at the Mount Korean this morning. Then verse 3, almost at the end. Paul says, among them we too all previously lived. And really that is an important thing to remember. There's no difference between us and the unsaved in that we're not better than them. We have a better destiny and eternity to go to, but we're not better than them. You know, we're tempted sometimes to think, oh, well, you know, I'm better than that guy in prison because I didn't murder anyone. I've just, you know, stolen something. Sin is sin. Even the smallest, if you will, of sins is still sin. The idea of sin is, I don't know if anyone has done archery or shooting, but you've got the target. And obviously you've got like the rings and whatever, and you've got the bullseye. Sin is anything that does not hit the absolute center of that bullseye every time from who knows how far away. But basically, that's impossible for us to do, to not sin. And some people try to classify sin as just those, you know, the classical ones that everyone knows, the 7 deadly sins: pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, wrath, and sloth. Wrath, I don't know how you want to pronounce it. But if that was so, if it's just those 7, then all you got to do is make sure you avoid those 7 things, and then you're right, you're gone. But it's not just that, it's every little transgression. Um, I had it here somewhere now, I don't know where it is. Sorry, I can't find the note. When with doing homeschooling and raising the children, we came across, I think it was Bodhi Buckham, talking about teaching the kids the Westminster Catechism. And as soon as you hear that word catechism, you think Catholic Church. Oh, no, don't do that. Catechism is just a series of questions and answers leading you to understand truth. And there was a point in talking about what is sin. And I wish I had it here now, but I cannot find it in my notes. I'll try to find it and I'll share it on the group. Just that very point. So what are we supposed to do then? If we all sin, how do we get out of things? Well, we know that we need a substitute and we know who that is. And he has paid the debt of sin for us. In this third verse, did I mention the second? Sorry, the first enemy that is mentioned is the world. Then it was the second enemy, the spirit of the air, Satan. Yeah, now we get to the third member of this, heard someone say the unholy trinity, if you will. It's the flesh. And it says we followed the lusts of our flesh. And if you think about it, people that just follow without any pause or thinking about what they're doing, it's kind of like an animal, just doing whatever comes to it at that point. What day did God create the animals? It's day 6. Which day did he create man? Day 6. This is not my own thinking, by the way. This is something I got from someone else. So what is the difference between man and animal? When God had formed man, he breathed into him the breath of life, or the spirit, if you will. And so if you look at people who do not have the spirit of God indwelling them, they kind of act like animals, don't they? They're like brute beasts. They just follow the base impulses of their fleshly desires. They just do whatever they want to do. And the text tells us indulging the desires of the flesh. I'm not going to go into details. It's not so nice, but it's along those lines of those traits that I read some of the things out about being spiritually dead. The carnal desires. But if you look there, it says, indulging the desires of the flesh and of the mind. It's not just the flesh. Your mind is an active enemy as well, and part of it. And you normally just blame the flesh and the nature because it's weak and wants these things, but we've got to consider our minds are against God and his ways. If you've tried praying for a long period of time, half an hour, 2 hours, you see how quickly your mind wanders off onto other things. You start thinking about what you need to do the next day, or a song comes into your mind. Your mind just wanders and it can't stay on track and focused on God. Mine does anyway, I don't know about you, but it is really difficult. But if you sit there, you put on a 3-hour movie, you can focus on that thing. You can quote from it. You can remember scenes. You can, it just comes so easily to us. We can just sit there and enjoy it. Why aren't we like that about the Bible? I'm not having a go at you. I'm pointing the fingers at me. Why am I not like that about church or prayer meetings, study groups, the praise and worship? Because we're still stuck in our flesh. As much as we want to get away from it, until we die, we got this thing with us. And it's difficult and it's a battle to bring that flesh under the subjection of the spirit. And sometimes it's because we feed the flesh more than we feed the spirit. It's kind of like that, I don't know if you've heard that illustration where a guy was talking to a Native American chief, and the guy's saying there are two wolves inside of you, a good one and an evil one. Which one will win? The guy sits and he thinks, well, I don't know, good is stronger than evil. He says, no, whichever one you feed more. I know that's their spirituality, but you get the idea behind it. What are you feeding more, the spirit or the flesh? So to close up, to conclude it, we've seen in Selby's teachings going through Hebrews where he read from Psalm 95 that each day we have that opportunity to hear his voice, to listen to the Spirit, to follow him, or harden your hearts and fall in the desert. We need to learn to choose life, to walk with Christ, and to bear his light in this world. We need to remember that we have that threefold enemy. It's not just watch out for what's on the media or look for the attacks from Satan and the deception. We also have our flesh to deal with. And we need to remember that we too were children of wrath. We're not special, more special or better than anyone. But in that, in dealing with the lost, we need to have compassion on them. I just saw a short clip by Ray Comfort, the head of Living Waters, who these guys from Australia are part of that ministry. And he was saying, if a blind person comes in here, how would we treat them? Wouldn't we be compassionate, gentle with them, and help them along? And we need to have that same heart and that same attitude to those who are spiritually blind and help them too. But for the grace of God, there you go.